Bonjour tout le monde, Marc-André Piette again back for week 2 for our golf and fitness program that we're going to have. So hopefully you guys were able to follow along the exercises that Derek gave you last week. Hopefully you feel a little bit stronger, a little bit better for week 2. So again, just to follow up for last week, we've talked about the C posture. So again, the common flaw that people have is to bend over from the upper back. So that's probably the most common posture flaw. Another flaw that we see sometimes when we're teaching golf is people that do the opposite. So that's what we call the S posture. So perhaps sometimes you've been told or taught to push your hips back or push your bum backwards, and then that creates a very big arc in your lower back here, and that's what we call the S posture. So what's going to happen when you have an S posture in the golf swing? Really, you're deactivating the influence or the action of your hips in the golf swing. So if you have the lower body too far back into your posture, it's going to be very, very difficult to rotate your hips properly into the golf swing. So for people that has a natural lower back that is bent backwards this way or into the S posture, what we're going to try to do is move the hips forward a little bit while staying into a very active position to make sure that we can activate again all the proper muscles in our body. So that's it for week 2, S posture. Again, Derek's going to follow up with you and give you some great exercise for you to work on it at home.
Welcome back, CAF members. Derek, FSI at Carling here for your week 2 corrective exercises for the S posture. Earlier this week, we went over mobility exercises that will help open up the areas that we're looking to correct, which is the front of the hips and the lower back. Now, what happens oftentimes for people that are in excessive S posture or excessive curvature in the low back is that they cannot engage the abdominals enough, and they don't use their glutes enough in their setup or in their swing to allow them to stay neutral through the posture. So what I'm going to give you guys today is I'm going to lead you with a couple of glute exercises to strengthen the glute muscles, and then we're going to tackle some core exercises, and there are a few that you're going to use both glutes and your core at the same time. So the first one, pretty standard, pretty simple exercise, but what you want to do here is really feel the glutes activate. It's called the glute bridge. Okay, so the bridge is going to be lying on your back. Heels are going to come in line with the knees, as close to the glutes as you can, and I would say start with feet about shoulder width apart. So from here, what we're looking to do, first you're going to contract your core. So you're going to squeeze your belly before you do anything. From there, you're going to drive your heels into the ground, and you're going to lift your hips up, thinking about squeezing your butt cheeks together. Those are the muscles that are going to push you up towards the ceiling with your hips, and then come back down. A lot of people do the glute bridge, but they do it incorrectly. Either they don't fully activate and they still have a flexion in the hips, or they overextend and then they get extension through the low back, which we don't want as well, because somebody with S posture already has those issues. So what I want you to think about, keep the belly tight, make sure the spine stays neutral. You're going to push through the heels, squeeze the butt, hold for a count of 2 to 3, and then lower back down. Drive through the ground with the heels, lift by squeezing the butt cheeks together. You should feel maybe a little bit of hamstring as well. That's a helper muscle. And then back down. If you feel this only in the hamstrings, there's a good chance that the hamstring or the glute isn't strong enough to support the weight lifting. So just the more you do it, the better it's going to get. Okay. The next one's called the tall kneeling weighted hip extension. So tall kneeling just means both knees are on the ground. You're going to start sitting back on the heels, and I'm going to show you this without weight first. So the movement actually is driving the hips forward, squeezing the glutes, keeping the belly tight, and that's all, again, hip extension. So trying to get the hip into a fully extended position. Here, the hip is in flexion, which is something that an S posture individual enjoys. This is comfortable for them. Getting into hip extension, where they squeeze their butt, drive the hips forward, will be a little less comfortable because they're not used to being open through the hips. If you want to make this a little more challenging, you grab anything with weight. It could be a backpack, it could be a dumbbell. I have a kettlebell here. I'm just going to flip it upside down. I cradle it just underneath my chin, and I'm going to drive my hips forward, squeeze my butt cheeks together, and then come back down. Again, holding for a 1 to 2 count, and then coming back down to my heels with my hips. Number 3, we have a step back lunge into a single leg balance. So step back lunge, just make sure you give yourself enough room if you're close to a wall, that when you step back, your foot isn't going to hit the wall. But as I step back, I'm trying to keep my chest tall. My front knee is at 90 degrees. Most of my weight is still on my front leg. And then from here in one motion, I'm going to try and push myself to standing and then bring my knee into a single leg balance, okay? If you have trouble with your balance, then you can go from lunge to stand to knee straight up to back down, okay? But we're always looking at stepping back, chest tall, back knee as close to the ground as possible. And then if you could go right up into that single leg balance, then you do so. You can go without stepping your feet back together, or once you're done your balance, you can bring your foot back down and then repeat as you go back into your lunge. Again, anything that you do on one side, you're going to do on the other side as well, so you're just going to switch with that one. Number 4, a side plank with hip thrust. Okay, so for this side plank, we're going to do it from the knees, okay? So the feet aren't going to be straight out in front of you. And you're going to start in a slightly flexed position, so hip flexion. So there's going to be a closure of the hip here. Elbow is underneath the shoulder. What we're going to do first is you're going to lift your hips in the air by squeezing your glutes. You're going to drive your hips towards the ceiling. And then from there, you're going to push your hips forward, back, down. So up, core engages, hips forward, glutes engage, hips back, and down. Right? So up, drive the hips forward, hips go back, and hips go down. And again, this is something that you do on one side, you're going to do on the other side as well. 2 more exercises. Number 5 is going to be a dead bug progression. So this one's for the core. You're going to be lying on your back, knees together, and you're going to be starting in bent knee, bent hip position. Arms straight up in the air. We're going to think about pulling our shoulders off the ground so that your back is pressed into the ground. This might be enough for you to start. Somebody who has a weaker core might just hang out here. If this is too easy and you can hold this for a little while, 30 seconds, then you can move on to the progression, which would be straighten one arm out but keep the shoulders off the ground, and the other arm. So the arms are going to be easier. Legs would be a little bit harder because you want to maintain your low back pressed into the ground. And then the hardest version of this movement would be opposite arm, opposite leg. Again, maintaining that hollow position, pressing your low back into the ground. And then you would switch sides, just like so. Okay, so there's your dead bug progression, going from no movement to multi-joint movements. And your last one is going to be a pal-off hold. So your pal-off hold, you grab a resistance band. You're going to step out to where you have some resistance with the band. Feet are underneath your shoulders. You're going to start at your chest. And from here, we're going to go ahead and you're going to press your arms out, lock out the elbows. Should be at about chest height here. And you're working against the band. The band's wanting to pull me back towards the right. I'm pushing my knees out, squeezing my belly as much as I can, and this is an anti-rotational movement, so I'm avoiding that band pulling me back by engaging mostly the right side of the body. And again, what we do on the right side, we're going to flip around and do on the left side as well. So those are 6 exercises for you. Again, the workout is going to follow at the end, so I'll give you some reps and sets that you can do for this workout. And these are exercises that will help strengthen the glutes and the core that will help take you out of S posture and put you back into a neutral spine position.